Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start the press conference. Remember, for the ones that are online, if you have any question, just raise your hand in the chat box. We're going to start here. First question. Cyber News.
Hi. I know you start your comments about the PREPA deal that gone wrong, but there's still some issues about that situation regarding the $23, $26, et cetera, et cetera. I just want you to use the opportunity to be as specific as you can be about any deal. There's still a deal. There's no deal. The deal is dead. We have to start from zero. No quantity. You're gonna reevaluate the consume of the people electricity bill. How you're gonna use the new terms of the negotiation to make a deal to the bondholders and also the people of Puerto Rico can pay.
Thank you. I'll just make a couple of comments. One is to say explicitly and clearly there is no deal at this point. We reached a point in the negotiations, under the supervision of the mediators in the negotiations with the bondholders where we concluded we were too far apart. What they believe is affordable and what we believe is affordable is not close enough at this point to make a deal. So there's no deal at this point. That doesn't mean we've given up. We will continue negotiating and continue talking, but there is no deal at this point. We're very focused on what is workable for the long-term health of PREPA and what's affordable for the people of Puerto Rico. On the $23 versus $26, I'm not going to get into the details of that. I could, but I don't think it would be all that helpful. The one thing that I'll say about it is the 23 in that discussion was the bondholders' summary or description of an offer made by the board, and so it's very indirect what that is, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't want to speculate about where a deal ultimately will be or where we're going to end up. I'll just say that we are laser focused on the health of PREPA and affordability and reliability for the people of Puerto Rico.
Hold it.
The governor said that you have multiple options and not necessarily be a charge on the electricity bill. I just want to know what are the alternatives if discussed or on the table to make a deal that all parts can agree, or on the discussions there were no alternatives considered at all?
Pretty much everything that we've discussed is part of the mediation and is subject to mediation confidentiality. The only thing I can say is that we really have focused carefully on what's affordable, ways to determine what's affordable, what the options are, and that's what we're focused on. But I can't get into specifics about details. That was all part of the mediation process, and we have to keep that confidential.
Next questions will be Foro Noticioso.
Preguntas serán del Foro Noticioso.
Antonio Medina, la pregunta es para usted porque quiero que la conteste en español y le explique bien.
I would like you to answer this question, Antonio Medina, in English and to explain yourself well, because there's a confusion as to the 2350. And when we ask about that, nobody knows where that came from. Where did that alleged charge come from? Yes, I would be glad to answer that, and thank you for asking the question. As the chairman of the board, David Skila, said, we have been in a mediation process which is confidential. Throughout the past months, with the bondholders. And throughout the process, offers have been made and counteroffers have been made. In a filing by the bondholders, they summarize a proposal by the board where, honestly, we don't have the formula, the mathematics as to how they arrived at that number, 23 or 26. It's not a number that we were working on as part of the negotiation. Our position is we can't comment about that number because it is not a number that came from the board. As you all know, the number came from people who read the filings that were submitted to the court. And they raised this issue about this number in one of the filings, but that number, I can say that categorically. The number does not represent a specific offer made by the board, FOMB, during the mediation process. I can tell you, however, that I'm committed to Puerto Rico, and I'm part of that table, and I'm advocating for Puerto Rican consumers. I'm defending the interests of the Puerto Rican consumers so that any negotiation that will come out of the mediation or court negotiation process, the Puerto Rican consumers, the businesses of Puerto Rico, and industrial and corporate ecosystem in Puerto Rico, any raise that is carried out, it's important to clarify that there will be some increase, considering that we do owe $9 billion. But any resolution to this issue, that it be a resolution that Puerto Ricans can live with. This makes the negotiation very complicated because we have this debt of $9 billion owed to bondholders, about $4 billion to do the proper funding for PREPA pensions. And the ones who are supposed to pay all that are consumers. Therefore, it's very difficult to find a solution that works for everybody. But I can tell you that my commitment is with the people of Puerto Rico. Cannot hear the question. For example, let's say that a person, John Doe, from Barranquita, who maybe just receives Social Security benefits, would have to pay more than a multi-million-dollar corporation? Well, that's a great point. And since we did not come up with that number, we did not offer that number, we don't know how they got to that number. Our offers do not have that structure. Therefore, it's a number that they calculated in a filing to summarize, let's say, the place where the negotiations were at the time. By the way, that's an old number. It's like 2 or 3 months old in terms of the filing they made. But at no time did we ever make a proposal similar to the proposal that everybody's been talking about for the last week in Puerto Rico. Thank you very much. Next question, Channel 4. Thank you. Good afternoon. Along the same line, you were saying the number of 23 and 26 is not a final proposal, and it's like a summary that they came up with of proposals that were presented. At any time, did the board present that number for any purpose? It's a number that I had never seen before, and I can tell you that I'm actively participating in the negotiations, all the meetings, and when I heard it for the first time, and the people who are here with me, the people who were there, when I read that Twitter message, I said, where did they get that number? It's not a number that came from the board, so it's very hard for us to comment anything about the number because this is not a number that we presented. And yes, of course, and I'm insisting on this because since you're saying it's a summary and you know that they came up with a summary using a number that was never put on the table by anybody. Well, we didn't generate that, so we can't defend it, of course. The next thing would be, you have said, and other members of the board have said, that it's very important that the number be payable by citizens and businesses. Any proposal close to that number, any proposal close to the number, whether it has been presented or not, is it payable by the citizens of Puerto Rico at this time? I'll make two comments. We're going through a confidential process, so honestly, none of us can talk about that. This is a legal bankruptcy case. We are in court. The structures that we have been working on take into consideration that there are consumers such as Amgen, and then there are consumers such as our parents who are retired and have very few financial resources to withstand an increase. Other than that, I cannot make any other comments because we are going through a legal confidential process. Can't hear the question. Just as to what you said, you since there's so you're advocating for an adjustable increase. Well, honestly, because of the nature of the case that we are currently going through in court, we cannot give details. I can tell you about me and my commitment to the people of Puerto Rico. We are fighting within the negotiation to make sure that the different types of consumers, when the increase takes effect, because as I said, there will be an increase. That's inevitable. But we want to make sure this increase will be affordable, and that is very complicated. And I really cannot make any comments in a forum like this about any active cases before the court. So I can only express my commitment to the people of Puerto Rico.
I would like to add one quick word. I just would like to emphasize again, there is no deal. There is no agreement. All of this discussion is about deals that didn't happen. And so I would urge you to wait until the board proposes something or agrees to something before you analyze what you think about it, and just underscore we are really carefully focusing on what is affordable for the people of Puerto Rico and what will make for a sustainable PREPA that will thrive in the future.
Let me just say that in Spanish again. Nosotros no tenemos un acuerdo todavía.
We do not have a deal, an agreement yet. We have been working and focusing on achieving an agreement that will work for Puerto Ricans. But we can't speculate how the final agreement will look, especially as you all know that these reports about 23 or 26 is about negotiations 2 or 3 months ago where somebody calculated somehow, which we do not know what it was, based on a filing in court, but we don't have an agreement, although we are working hard to defend the consumers of Puerto Rico from the impact.
Thank you, Mr. Medina. We are moving to the folks on the online. Kevin Mead, I think you have some question for Chairman.
Yes, thanks. A couple of quick ones real quick on PREPA. Has the Oversight Board already started drafting a new PREPA restructuring proposal that's due in the Title III court by December 1st? You know, I understand there's going to be toggles and all, but is that process of drafting started?
It's not really a question I can answer other than to say we're well aware of the December 1 deadline, and we have every intention of meeting the December 1 deadline.
Okay, and then just as a sort of follow-up, have any parties expressed an interest in negotiating with you on a PREPA restructuring, either in mediation or outside of mediation? Is that ongoing? Is that, you know?
Well, I can't talk about what's going on in mediation. You're aware, I'm sure, of public statements that various parties have made. So some parties have made public statements about their view of the process, but what's going on within mediation, I can't comment on.
Any other question?
Can you
Kevin?
comment on anything outside of mediation?
I'm not going to comment. I could, but I'm not going to at this point.
Okay.
Thank you. Next question, Nuevo Dia, Joan Isabel.
Good afternoon. I do have a couple of questions regarding PREPA, but also regarding the budget. I would start with PREPA. Although there is no deal, we wonder if the financial framework that has been structured is still in place. I'm talking precisely about the connection charge, about all the legal technicalities that are considered as part of the negotiation. I would like to know if that's still a starting point to try to reach an agreement. That's the first question.
And I'm not completely sure what you're talking. What are you talking about as the starting point?
The RSA.
If the terms of the financial framework that was structured through the RSA is still the starting point to try to reach an agreement with creditors, or you're scratching that framework as well, and you're trying to get a deal with a new set of terms and conditions.
That's another one of those questions that I really can't answer because that's going to be within mediation. I can just repeat that everything that's been made public is proposals that did not result in a deal, and so those are not the deal terms, or it's unlikely those will be the deal terms. I can't really speak further about where the negotiations are going or will go.
Earlier, you said that the board was analyzing specifically how this potential agreement would affect local consumers. And I'm wondering if you can provide us details in terms of what type of analyses the board is conducting to determine what would be affordable for local consumers.
We're just conducting affordability analyses, and I can't get into the details of them again because this is all part of the mediation process. Once there's a plan in place, we might be able to say more, but at this point we can't really get into details.
Last question.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Joanny.
I do have a question regarding.
I didn't realize you were in the room.
I was pointing to her.
Don't worry.
I was looking for you up there.
Nice seeing you, Professor. I do have a question regarding the budget and Medicare. There's been a controversy surrounding that matter. What's precisely the view of the board if we consider the fiscal plans? At some point in time, you're considering that we're going to be in deficit. But I cannot, at this moment, understand how the potential of not having these funds would change those estimates, which in fact are basically the guarantee to complete or to honor our new liabilities with creditors. And I'm wondering specifically how this could affect the budget and certainly our responsibility with creditors going forward.
So I'll say a couple of things with respect to the Medicare and the Medicaid. First of all is that the board, like most people in Puerto Rico, doesn't believe that Puerto Rico is treated fairly with respect to Medicaid, and we believe that Puerto Rico is entitled to fair and equitable treatment with respect to Medicaid, and our hope is that there will be a permanent solution to that problem. We've had a number of temporary solutions, and they've been helpful in the short run, but there needs to be a permanent solution. So that's our view on Medicaid generally. In terms of the fiscal plan, with our fiscal plans, we have a very long-term policy that we put the fiscal plans together with existing legislation in mind. And so we take account what Congress has committed to, not things that Congress has not committed to. So we're very conservative and necessarily conservative about how we do the budgeting. And Ginorli, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I would add is that the current budget for the Commonwealth already includes the assumption that, the FMAP of the 76% ends in December. So it's appropriately budgeted for this fiscal year.
David, may I comment?
Antonio?
I will come in Spanish, though. Yo voy a dar por lo menos voy a ir más lejos todavía.
I'll go beyond that. I'll go beyond what the chairman has expressed. My opinion is that Puerto Ricans, U.S. citizens that we are, deserve the same treatment that every other U.S. citizen is given in the United States with regard to Medicare. And in my own personal opinion, this is me as a person speaking, I support any initiative that is being carried out before Congress to make sure that Puerto Ricans have access to the necessary health system for Puerto Ricans and Puerto Rican families to have equal rights in comparison with the United States citizens living in the continental United States, the mainland. Now, the technical issue, which has been commented about in the last weeks, is that when we draw up a budget, if Congress has not allotted funds, we, on the board, and anyone who is drawing up a responsible budget cannot assume that those funds will be approved in the future. Therefore, our budget has to be built in a manner that is conservative, presuming that in the event that whether it's left map or top cap doesn't change with respect to what is legislated today, we will have the financial resources to cover those needs in our own budget. We agree on the board that we do support legislation to increase the left map, and we do support legislation to increase the current caps, and we understand that Puerto Ricans are not being treated fairly. But from the budgetary standpoint, what is responsible is to use current active legislation and that those be the presumptions represented in the budget.
Next question will be
Mr. Chairman?
Sorry, go ahead, Mr.
No,
Nixon.
this is John Nixon. I just want to emphasize this point. You know, having been a budget director in 2 different states and in government for a long time, this is a fundamental best practice that we need to incorporate in Puerto Rico. And so I think it's very important, as Antonio said in his eloquent Spanish. My Spanish isn't that good, but I did understand him. We need to separate out the policy and the beliefs versus our budgeting and our financial practices. And if we're not careful, I mean, this is kind of what got Puerto Rico and other states in trouble, is when they were counting on money and they were putting money into their budget that was not set, right? And so, again, that policy is that we'll address it when it comes. So if they readjust the FMAP and move it back to where everybody thinks they should, then at that point, we're more than happy to go ahead and build that into the budget and to utilize those funds. So it's not, by no means should that be viewed as our opinion with regard to the federal treatment of Medicaid in Puerto Rico. It's just solamente only a fundamental building block on how we're going to build this budget.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Next question will be Vocero, and then Oscar Serrano. Vocero.
Greetings to all. There's been a lot of talk today regarding affordability for whatever deal you guys reach in mediation for PREPA. However, there's also a lawsuit going on. The board has already presented the amended lawsuit. On Monday, the bondholders respond, basically challenging the security interests of the bondholders. Doesn't the board believe that the best way to guarantee some form of affordability in rates is precisely to move forward with the lawsuit, challenge the the security interest of the bondholders, and perhaps from their part to a new set of negotiations with this new understanding of what their rights of acreencia are, creditor rights?
Mr. Chairman?
What I would say about that is we believe that the best thing right now was to move forward with the litigation. We have been successful with litigation in the past, and it was a key component of the Commonwealth Plan of Adjustment. But there are a lot of factors that go into that. So you can lose the litigation as well as win the litigation. We think we're likely to win it. We're very optimistic about our chances. But if we lose, it makes things worse rather than better. And so you continuously need to balance all of those factors, the risk that you're going to lose, the likelihood you're going to win. Right now, we think because we're because we're far apart from the creditors, we think the litigation needs to go forward while we're negotiating. But next week or 2 weeks from now, we might reach a different conclusion. You really do have to consider all of the factors. There are very big upsides to the litigation. There are also downsides to the litigation, and we're taking all of those into account.
It's been a few months since you guys had an executive director. Are you guys comfortable without one at this point?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end.
Are you guys comfortable without an executive director at this point, or is that moving at all?
It is moving. I believe that we have interviewed the person who will be the executive director. We've interviewed some great people, and I think we've interviewed likely the person who will be the executive director. I hope we'll have that person in place really soon. So I would say that. The other thing that I would say is our staff has been spectacular. They have really stepped up. We knew we had a great staff even before the last 6 months, but they really, really have stepped up, and they're doing an incredible job. So I am quite confident today as well as tomorrow about the board's ability to do its work. We do want to have an executive director. Hopefully we have soon. We will have one soon, but we are in very, very good hands now. We really have a great staff.
Soon, before Thanksgiving, before Three Kings Day, before February of next year?
I don't know. I wish I could say it was going to be after we finish our lunches, but I don't know. I hope it'll be soon. I'll just repeat what I said. We have a spectacular staff, and they're doing a good job. So I'm not worried about the board's ability to do its work. But we do hope to have a new executive director in place soon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's going to be Oscar Serrano and then Joan Isabel again. Oscar.
Hello, Professor, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, Professor, and hi to all the other members of the board and my colleagues. Actually, my question was in line with my colleagues from El Vocero regarding litigation, but I will press on a point because I think it will be very helpful for everyone, and when I say everyone, I mean everyone hearing us, people of Puerto Rico, to understand the stakes in this litigation. What's the best possible outcome for the people of Puerto Rico in this litigation?
Well, I'll take a different view than our chairman. I think that it's the wrong course, and I think that the board has assumed a lot of risk on behalf of the people of Puerto Rico by, in an unprecedented way, challenging the lien of bondholders. It's really, I've said this publicly, I believe it to be an attack on the municipal finance system in the United States, and we could lose the litigation. I would just underscore and emphasize that this is a dynamic process. Our chairman's right that we could be in a different position a week from now, 2 weeks from now, and I'm only speaking for myself, but there are multiple members of the board who really would like to try to get something done and believe that that's possible. We had a great presentation today, a success story in this pension trust board, and one takeaway from that I think everybody should have is that it's possible to pay bondholders and pay pensions, and not cut them and fully fund them. And that's what we did when we did the GO restructuring. And we can do the same thing with PREPA. There's a lot of talk about affordability, but in my view, there's not enough talk about the people, including many people here on the island, and on the mainland who are retirees and pensioners who have not been paid anything for 8 years. So, we need to talk about those people as well. And we're not going to wipe them out. We are where we are relating to litigation in the mediation. But it's a dynamic process, and I really truly believe that we're gonna come to an agreement, because the board was created by Congress to make deals, not to litigate, not to become a billion-dollar enterprise, not to keep Puerto Rico in bankruptcy in perpetuity, and to take away the authority of your duly elected officials. And so I don't think litigation was the right course. I think we were taking on a lot of risk. And again, we'll see what happens, and I'm hoping that the chairman's right, that it catalyzes a refocus on discussions, and that we come to an agreement. That's where I'm focused.
I'd like to counter Justin's point. I do believe that litigation is an important tool in our negotiation with the creditors. Unfortunately, we have tried very hard to come to a consensual agreement, but those efforts have not resulted in an agreement, as you all know. And I don't think we were close enough to continue mediation. So I very much support the board's decisions that we walked out of mediation. I think that by going to court and challenging the lien, we will force the parties to come together, because as Chairman Skill said, there is a risk in litigation, but it's not just the risk to the people of Puerto Rico, it's also the risk to the creditors. And at the end of the day, this shouldn't be a win-all, lose-all scenario, but we should come to a place where those folks that lend money to Puerto Rico, in this case to PREPA, are able to get back a portion of what they lent, but in a way that is affordable to the people of Puerto Rico. And I will stress again that some of us in the board are adamant that we cannot enter into a deal that is not affordable to the people of Puerto Rico, and that it will hurt the economic development of this island. And as you can see, there's multiple views in the board, but at this point, there's no agreement. We are in litigation, and my expectation is that that litigation will in fact help us find that consensual deal.
Thank you, Mr. Medina. Mr. Chairman, I think you want to add something to that? No, it's okay. Go ahead, John. Oh, yeah, Oscar.
I'm sorry, very briefly. I was aiming for a dollar figure. Does anyone have a dollar figure for the best possible outcome in this litigation? I mean, how much debt gets discounted or erased or discharged, however you want to call it, as a result of this litigation? How much debt could be erased?
Let me comment. Each case is different. So, I mean, you can look now at the Commonwealth plan of adjustment. We actually talked today about the transportation, carreteras plan of adjustment. And that can tell you a little bit about how the resolution to these cases comes out to be. However, each specific case is unique and different, and we cannot speculate on how the story is going to end until we get to the end of the story.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, but I guess you should know when you file the case, I mean, how much money, how much the amount of debt that could be affected by the outcome of the case.
Chairman,
I'll just say to that the final answer for the creditors is not zero. Even if we were to win all of our challenges, we would have to pay some of the debt. If we were to win all of our challenges, it would significantly reduce what was owed to the bondholders in particular. But the final answer is not going to be zero to creditors. We're going to have to pay something to the creditors, and as we've been saying, we are committed to making sure that that what we end up with is affordable for the people of Puerto Rico.
And if we were to lose, if we were to lose all our, the other side of that coin is if we were to lose our challenges, Puerto Rico will pay far more for electricity than they would have under the terms of the RSA. That's why this is a roll of the dice.
Yeah, that's not actually accurate, I don't believe. And
It
it's
is
not,
accurate.
It's not accurate.
It is accurate.
It'll be less than the RSA.
Accurate. If we lost the litigation, we would have to pay more.
No,
Last question, Oscar.
Chairman, when you say significant reduction, to you, significant is over 50%, over 60, over 75?
We can speculate.
Yeah, it's not worth speculating.
Yeah, really
on
can
the
speculate.
numbers. If
We're in court.
we were to win, if we were to win the litigation, it would significantly reduce the claims of a large percentage of the creditors, and we just leave it at that. And I'll also say we're optimistic about the strength of our litigation case, but we will make a decision on a week-by-week basis whether to continue with litigation or whether to settle if there's a reasonable offer on the table.
We're moving to next question.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Oscar. Joanny from Nuevo Dia.
It's more than evident that creditors aren't in agreement, but also the board is not in agreement. It's clear that board members differ drastically in this matter. You've said earlier that you're going to commit and you're going to meet the deadline December 1st. If that's the case and this is the situation, how do you intend to submit a plan of adjustment for PREPA? It's going to be a cram down plan of adjustment, or what do you think it's going to happen in the coming weeks? Either you're going to get to an agreement within the board, or someone within the creditor side will try to get it into an agreement and then draw a new proposal.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm not going to speculate about what the plan that we file by December 1 looks like. I'll be happy to talk about it when we file. And I will say that the positions I've been articulating are positions that are held by a significant majority of board members. You know, things can change day by day, but this is a significant majority of the board members hold the views that I've articulated.
Okay. Thank you. We are wrapping up, so we have one more question from HTA, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Does the new HTA fiscal plan, does that still require a new toll concession by the end of this year? Is that, the wording's a little confusing to me. It looks like maybe the viability is still being considered. I don't know if that's the model or if a new toll concession has to happen this year under the fiscal plan.
Okay. Alejandro can answer that.
Thank you. So the fiscal plan reflects or requires the government to pursue a P3. Of course, it doesn't require them to achieve it, because that would depend on what the market what the response from the market is to a potential proposal. But what I can say is that process has commenced, and the government has launched an RFQ, which, of course, that will lead to responses, and hopefully that leads to a qualification of a set of respondents that then leads to an RFP. But the process for identifying and achieving a P3 concession for the remaining toll roads has already commenced.
Okay, I think if there is no more question, no hay más preguntas, well, thank you so much.
So
yes.
So this is John Nixon. Can I just
Sure, go ahead.
It's kind of tough being virtual, but I just want to say, and I know that going back to Joanne Isabel's question about the disagreement within the board, I personally don't think that that's all that unhealthy. I mean, obviously, we try to be unified in everything that we can, but we're dealing with a very, 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 very challenging issue here, right? And we start talking about affordability, right? And yes, we've done many, many analysis on affordability. The fact is that Puerto Rico is already paying very, very high power rates. And so it's very difficult to pass that along to ratepayers. But at the same token, these creditors have not been paid for, as we've said, for 8 years. And they've lent hard money into the Commonwealth, and they continued to lend money into the Commonwealth and into the power company. And so we're really, as board members, tasked with a very challenging set of circumstances. And yes, there are some on the board, me included, who want to maximize everything we can to the bondholders as they've lent money into the Commonwealth. And I think that's important going forward, right? I mean, Puerto Rico has many challenges, and it's going to need access to the capital markets. And so we're trying to, do the best we can in a very, very challenging situation. Having said that, I think we need to maximize to the bondholders. We also need to make sure that we're protecting the consumers, and not only that, but giving the power company the ability to have a successful future, right? We didn't create this mess. Clearly, I mean, the board is here trying to really make lemonade out of lemons. And I just would encourage everybody to understand we're in a very, very challenging situation. I mean, if you could imagine if you personally had loaned $9 billion to the power company, and now the lien challenge is being threatened to say, yeah, you lent that money, but because of whatever reason, we're going to challenge that you don't have any legal right to have any of that money paid back. That's a tough pill to swallow, right? But also we need people to be reasonable, to come to the table and say, really, there's no good solution here. I mean, really, everything we do is difficult when it comes to the power company. And so I actually think, I don't want you leaving thinking there's huge disagreements in the board and we're never going to come to the right decision. I personally voted against challenging the lien. I was one of the minority voters, but I'm a big boy, and I understand the strategy and the need to do that to help bring people to the table. And so it's not like I disrespect my fellow board members. I totally respect them and their abilities and their understanding. So we will get there as a board, but I will tell you that these healthy discussions, I think they're healthy, and I think at the end of the day, they will allow us to come together as the board, and I don't think anyone on any side of the situation is going to feel like they totally won, right? I don't think any board members will. I don't think anybody involved in this situation will, just because there are really no good answers. But I just want you to say that, as I've had experience balancing budgets, you've got to really deal with the best that you can, and that's what we're trying to get to. And these types of discussions, and while sometimes it's not real healthy that they're public, I don't think are a bad thing for the board's work.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. We have one more question for Mr. Skill regarding HTA. Vocero.
Just to clarify, when is the effective date of the HTA plan of adjustment?
Oh, I think that is a question for Alejandro.
Alejandro, when is the effective?
So there's no set effective date. The Commonwealth and the Oversight Board are working together to make sure that the conditions to achieve an effective date and effectuate the HTA plan are met.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Muchas gracias a todos. Damos por
everybody.
finalizado.